All right, let's talk about one of the most brilliant minds you've probably never even heard of, a truly towering figure from 11th century Tibet.
We're going to get into the life and legacy of this guy whose mind was so powerful, he literally changed the game for Tibetan Buddhism.
All right, so let's start at the very beginning. And this story, it doesn't kick off with some old, seasoned scholar. Nope, it starts with a kid who, right from the get-go, seemed destined for something incredible.
So right from the moment he was born, stories started swirling around him. People were whispering that he wasn't just some ordinary kid. They thought he was the reincarnation of a legendary Indian scholar, Smrtijana Kirti. You know, all these tales were basically setting the stage for the incredible mind that was about to emerge.
Okay, get this. This timeline it's just wild. At 11, he starts studying philosophy. By 12, just 1 year later, he's already getting into advanced tantric teachings. And by 13, his teachers basically said, yep, he's mastered everything we've got. I mean, think about it. At 13, most of us are just, well, being 13. And this kid had already hit the peak of his education. Incredible.
You know, his brain worked so fast that the other students actually complained he was being disruptive. Can you believe that? It got so bad, his own dad thought about pulling him out of school. But his teacher saw what was really going on. He stepped in and said, no, he has understood all the teachings. He knew this wasn't a kid being a pain. This was the sign of a once-in-a-generation mind. And it wasn't just other people saying this. Rongzom himself said it. In his own words, I am not one of little learning, for of most teachings I have heard but once. And look, this wasn't him being arrogant. It was just a fact. He only had to hear something one time. Just imagine that. Having a mind that could absorb the deepest philosophical concepts instantly. That's the kind of genius we're dealing with here.
Okay, but here's the thing. A mind like that, it's not going to go unnoticed or unchallenged. As he grew up and became this great teacher, a pandita, he ran into a whole new level of skepticism.
And this slide, it just lays out the central conflict of his life so perfectly. On one hand, he had to prove himself to his own people. They were like, wait, how can a Tibetan be writing stuff this profound? But then you have the Indian masters, the guys from the very source of the tradition, who took one look at him and were like, wow, you need to be writing your own books now. So you had this stream of top scholars from all over Tibet showing up, ready to debate him, ready to prove him wrong. And one by one, they all left completely humbled, totally in awe. There's this one great story about a master named Guru Se Lotsawa. He shows up, kind of mocking Rongzom, until he actually reads his work. He was so blown away, he ended up begging to become his student. What a turnaround. He really did become this bridge between two worlds. I mean, he mastered Sanskrit, the original language of the teachings, without any formal training, so he could work side by side with all the great Indian masters who were visiting Tibet. He wasn't just a student, he was their collaborator, and they were the ones who saw his genius up close and kept pushing him, saying, you've got to write this down.
All right, so he's proven he's the real deal. But what did he actually do? What was the incredible gift he left for the world?
Okay, so his first huge project was a commentary on something called the Garbha Tantra. Now, this text is, well, it's foundational, but it's also famous for being incredibly difficult to understand. There's even a legend that he dreamt he literally ate the entire book, just like a loaf of bread, which basically meant he had completely absorbed its meaning. And you know what? His commentary was so good, so clear, that it became the go-to guide. People are still studying it centuries later. And it didn't stop there. He was also a master of what they called Dzogchen, or the Great Perfection. This is seen as the absolute highest, most direct path in his tradition. It's all about realizing the true primordial nature of your own mind. And Rongzom's special genius was that he could write about this incredibly profound, subtle stuff in a way that people could actually grasp. He made it accessible like no one before him.
And here's what's so important about his work. It wasn't just high-level philosophy. He gave people a real, structured path to follow. He basically broke it down into 3 key stages. First, get your ethics straight with the sacred vows. Second, master your concentration with meditation. And third, perfect your wisdom with the great perfection. He didn't just point to the destination, he drew the entire map.
So that brings us to the big question, right? Why are we still talking about a scholar from the 11th century? Why does he still matter so much?
Because what he did was a monumental turning point. You have to remember, back then, all the authority, all the legitimacy came from India. But Rongzom, with his sheer brainpower, proved that a Tibetan master could be on the same level as the greatest scholar saints from India. It gave Tibetan Buddhism this incredible new confidence. He wasn't just a student anymore. He was a master shaping the tradition.
And this wasn't just, a hometown opinion. The proof is in the pudding. We know he worked directly, as a translator and a colleague, with at least 7 major Indian panditas. We're talking the absolute top-tier scholars of the day, guys like Manjushri Varman and Amoghavajra, and they didn't see him as a student. They respected him as an equal.
So his legacy is just immense. He didn't just write some important books. He basically built the entire intellectual and spiritual foundation for his school. His commentaries are still the gold standard. It's no wonder that even today, people see him as a manifestation of Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom himself. He is the embodiment of that wisdom.
So in the end, Rongzom's story, it's more than just history, right? It's really a testament to what a single human mind is capable of, to master, to combine, and to shine a light on the most profound knowledge there is for everyone's benefit. It really makes you stop and think, what are the true limits of our own potential?